Come Japan.
Hello everybody, welcome again to another edition of Why Come Japan. I'm joined today here by Mr. Alan Albo, Mr. Drifthunter. Is that the alias we use? Well, what's the alias you use?
Hey guys, please call me Albo.
Albo, okay.
Yep.
Albo it is. And what's your origin of that name? You gave me a pretty good summary there when the last time I met you.
Well, my given name is Alan Bo, and so I just cut off the middle, put it together. I think it makes it a little bit more recognizable because I couldn't find anybody named Albo on the internet.
Right. No, it's clever. I like it. I mean, like usually when I do these interviews, I like to structure them like, I'm meeting somebody for the first time. Kind of like how when you meet somebody at a party, drinking a beer or whatever.
It's like, what do you do, right?
Yeah, what do you do? That sort of thing. Yeah, so instead of doing like these by the numbers kind of cookie cutter interviews, I kind of want, this is the way I kind of structure these interviews is, in this kind of casual laid back way, which brings me to my first question. So as a drift hunter, how does one actually catch a drift?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Do you mean like how does one actually start drifting?
Yeah, like let's say I pop onto the internet, I go to Wikipedia or something, but I'd rather hear it from an expert, Anybody can write Wikipedia.
Oh, sorry, do you mean like how do you get into drifting or how do you initiate a drift while you're driving a car?
Let's start with how do you get into drifting?
I think basically what happens is a lot of people will kind of discover drifting either through media, through like, Fast and Furious or through this anime series called Initial D. And then they're like, oh, that's really cool. That looks really dangerous and interesting. I wonder if I can do that. So they'll look up stuff on YouTube and they'll kind of stumble into this rabbit hole of all these like professional drifters, the world of drifting. And then they're like, I wonder if I can do that. So they'll go out onto their like school parking lot or whatever. And they'll hit the gas and pull the e-brake and see if they can slide the car. And that's basically how it starts. You start from the first question to your second question, I guess. So you see a bunch of stuff. You're like, I wonder if I can do that. Then you go try it.
What got you into it originally?
Well, actually, the story, I guess, kind of starts for me in high school before I even knew that drifting was a real thing. I liked the anime called Initial D, which is kind of about street racing in Japan. If maybe your viewers might have heard of it. And there was a really popular video game at the arcade. So it's just a racing game at the arcade. And I would spend hours and hours playing that arcade game and trying to get better at it. It's weird because when I came to Japan, I couldn't choose where I was going to go. And I was placed in Gunma, which happened to be the setting of that anime. Over time, I was like, I need a car. Because when I first came to Japan, I was riding something called a mamachari, which, as you know, is just like a cheap little
bicycle. Yeah, one of the like little pouch in front. What is that thing? Little cage thing. You look like a girl riding one of those things.
Yeah, like literally like a grandma bicycle, right?
See, I guess that's why they call it a mamachari. Mama meaning, your mother, and then chari meaning... What's chari meaning?
Chariot.
Yeah, chariot. There you go. What's funny is everybody uses those bikes in Japan.
Everybody, yeah. I thought it would be like... Because when I first came to Japan, it looks like such an old school bicycle. So, but then, yeah, like you said, literally everybody uses them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I used one of those bikes in Tokyo, somebody would kick my ass in America, It's like, hey, what are you driving a girl's bike for,
Loser. Throw a rock at you.
Yeah, but here it's so acceptable. I mean, like, you can have, like, pink umbrellas and nobody really says anything,
Yeah, the thing with them, though, is they're really heavy. And well, I guess for one, like, the good thing about them is that they're durable. But then, because they're so heavy, you get really tired of going around. Although I guess you build strong legs. But anyway, so I would go to work in that mamachari, like rain or snow. It was pretty terrible sometimes. I was like, I need a car. So I was looking for a car, and actually my next door neighbor at the time was selling her car, and it was a black first generation Mazda Roadster, and it's a convertible. And I was like, at the time, it had a little bit of a reputation as like a hairdresser car. That's what people were calling it. So I was like, I don't know if I want to drive a hairdresser car. My neighbor, her name's Mizuki, she was like, why don't you just take it for a quick test drive? So I was like, all right. So she gave me the keys and I hopped into the car. At the time, I couldn't really drive manual, but I was like, okay, I'll just figure out as I go along. It took me about 15 minutes, and then I dropped the top, and then I was like, this is the best thing ever. At that up to that point, I'd never ridden in a convertible, but I was instantly sold. So like as soon as I got back, I was like, here, take this money before I change my mind, or take the money before and don't change your mind, please. And so I paid for it. It was like $2,000, best $2,000 I ever spent. From there, that's when I first came to Japan, which was in 2010. And I would go for drives, like kind of by myself on the roads, on the mountain roads, like in the area. And kind of over time, I made a few friends, like English teachers who were kind of doing the same thing. They had come to Gunma, and they had bought sports cars, like cheap sports cars. And so I kind of fell into this crowd of, there's only like 8 of us, and we were called the Gunma High Octane Club. So we were all just English teachers. We were all participants on the JET program. Me in my Master Roadster. There was my senpai in a black S14 Nissan Silvia, and there was another guy. What's his name? His name was Lee. He also had a white S14. There was a friend of ours, Mike, who drove an Evo 2, a white Evo 2. Another friend of ours, GV, who drove a red Subaru Vivio, which was a turbocharged little K car. A couple more. Another guy who drove a Skyline, and another guy who drove name escapes me right now. But it was a pretty eclectic bunch, and we would go for drives. Eventually, I kind of fell into the drifting scene, just because like my senpai, the guy with the black S14, invited me out to go street drifting one night. Yeah, so I was like, street drifting? You mean like an initial D? Like that's real? And he was like, it's real. Real. It's exactly like the anime. And I was like, no way.
I imagine you started liking cars at a really young age. Am I right?
I would say so. I mean, I had like the stereotypical Lamborghini Countach poster on top of my bed. I grew up liking cars. No, I actually grew up with a camel.
Wait, what? Is this true? You grew up with a camel?
Well, it was a camel I saw every day, not my camel. I lived in Saudi Arabia for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. From when I was like 0 to just about when I was 10. My dad worked in Saudi Arabia for IBM.
Really? Are you part Saudi?
No, not at all. I'm Filipino Canadian, but just my dad worked there for. It was a good time to be working in the Middle East at the time, I guess. Although I was there during the Gulf War, which is a whole nother story.
I've never been there, so I mean, I have one friend who's Saudi. Is that the right terminology? Saudi?
I think Saudi or Saud. I think Saudi. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one friend who's lived there, and basically, you can't go there unless you work there.
Right. You can't go in there as a foreign national and become like a Saudi national. You got to be born.
So I imagine, like, when you're drifting, like, you need, like, sort of a nice car, and you need to know where to put your hands in the steering wheel. Like, how would I, if I, like, let's say I had a car, and I wanted to just drift for the hell of it, how would I do it?
Okay, first things first, I don't actually drift. So there's, like, basically 2 main schools of driving, of racing. Or there's more, but okay, so there's grip, which is where you try to go as fast as you can around the course, and you're not trying to break traction. So it's a style of racing. With drifting, you let the back of the car lose traction, so the rear tires slide out. And some people believe that it can be used effectively in a race situation to be faster around a corner. But for the most part, drifting nowadays it's kind of like snowboarding on the street. So it's like drifters will do it, or like on a half pipe. It's quite similar to that. I like the snowboard, so that's how I draw the comparison, because it's not so much for speed and to win a race. It's more for like who can get the closest to the wall without crashing their car, who can have the widest, craziest drift, the most showy drift to wow the audience with their spectacular driving skills.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that a lot of excitement people have for drifting comes from that anime, Initial D. So you said you just randomly found Initial D, or like how did you like get into anime?
Well, I got into anime when I think in the 6th grade, when I kind of stumbled upon a few that were introduced to me by my little Korean friend, and so since then I got really into anime for a while. I was a weeaboo before it was a thing.
We're all weeaboos. Secretly.
Yeah, all of us. Some not so secret. But no, I really like anime like Trigun, and I think my favorite of all time is this harem one called Love Hina. And It's super, super good. It was like there was this dude. So he was like he couldn't get into university, so he went into this onsen town and worked at this onsen hotel that happened to have all these cute girls living in it. And there's this one he particularly fancied, and it's like a love story. It's actually very, very good. I recommend everybody go and watch it. I watch it like once a year. What else? I think it was just one summer I kind of got into cars in general from playing like Gran Turismo and Need for Speed. And then I was like, I wonder if there's any car anime. And I found Initial D. And then from there I kind of got into it. But at the time, it was so far removed from like my daily life that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, you know, street racing in Japan. But then after that, Fast and Furious started getting more and more popular. Like there's kind of like a stateside and Canada's side. There was like this boom of people who were like really into, well, I think street racing was like always illegal, but people started modifying their cars, and it became a big thing to have like, you know, like a modded Civic and, you know, modded Subarus and stuff like that. So growing up, I didn't have my own car, so I always kind of wanted my own car. I would just drive my parents' car around, right? And like the minivan. And I was like, okay, one day I'm going to buy a sports car, and one day I'm going to go to Japan, and maybe one day I'll go to Japan and buy a sports car. And that kind of happened.
Well, you didn't plan on going to Guma, did you? Or you like had that set or whatever?
I didn't even plan to go to Japan. It kind of all happened by accident, sort of. So I had liked Japanese culture or been kind of interested in it for quite a while, like since high school, right? As weeaboos do. And I had a friend who went to Akita Prefecture, which is like in the northern end of Japan. And so she would send me like pictures and update Facebook and show like her friends and stuff like what living in Japan is like. And I was like, that's really interesting. I really want to do that. And I wanted to do an exchange program when I was in university, but I didn't manage to get into the program because it was really competitive. So I was like, okay, well, there goes that dream. One day at a career fair, I stumbled upon this booth for something called the JET program. And the JET program stands for, you probably know, the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. And essentially, it's a cultural exchange program between Japan and like 42 different countries. So like college-age graduates come to Japan and they'll work in Japan, either in schools or in local like city halls and in prefecture halls to do like basically internationalization stuff, teach English in schools. And I was like, hey, that's really cool. I would really love to do that, but I could only do it after I graduated. And when I found it, I was still in like I was still a freshman, so it was like in the back of my mind for years. After I graduated from university, I was working at a bank, and I was like, man, I really hate this.
What bank were you working? Can I ask? Or if you don't want to reveal, it's fine.
No, yeah, I was working for TD Bank. No, it's like it was a good company. Like nothing wrong with it. I just kind of was yearning for excitement and had this kind of like wanderlust. And I was like, I really want to go on like this big crazy adventure.
I totally know that feel, but yeah.
As a lot of people who wind up in Japan, they have like that yearning, this desire to kind of experience something that maybe they've seen in movies and in anime when they were growing up, right? So while I was working at the bank, I was like, I'll just apply to that program that I remember. Like it popped back into my mind, the JET program. So I applied to it and I got into it. And the thing with the JET program is you can make requests of where you're going to go. And so I requested, where did I request? The thing is, I didn't know very much about the geography of Japan, so I made like completely random requests. I request like Osaka and Akita, where my friend went, and I think Chiba, which is a little bit east of Tokyo. And I think they just kind of like made a triangle and just put me in the middle of that triangle, which happened to be in Japan. This is just a total theory. But yeah, basically, you can't really choose. It's like a spinning dartboard. They just kind of assign you wherever.
Right. I mean, that's what I've heard. I've had bunch of friends who are Jets, and they always tell me that they always like putting you in countryside areas.
Yeah, and the word for that is inaka. So a lot of Jets get placed in the inaka, which is like off in the mountainside or the countryside or off the coast, like far end of Japan. Some people even get placed in random islands that are geographically closer to Taiwan than they are to Japan, but still technically Japanese jurisdiction. So it's a luck of the draw kind of thing. And I was really lucky because Gunma, where I'm placed, is a wonderful place. I love this place so much. A lot of people even in Japan think like, oh, Gunma is like totally countryside, right? There's nothing to do there, but it's a spectacularly beautiful place, incredible scenery, incredible for onsen, which are hot springs. Very, very, so hot springs, like you go into them and you're like naked and you soak and
Wait, you're naked? No, I'm joking. I did not know this. I'm never going to an onsen. No, yeah. No, they're great onsens, by the way.
yeah, and Gunma has probably the best onsen in Japan, arguably. I would argue, anyways. But yeah, so I didn't choose, and I was just lucky to be placed here, and things worked out.
That's awesome. I don't know, because I mean, I did some research in this whole Initial D thing, because I was, skimming your channel, because that's what, people who do interviews should do.
A little bit of background research.
I mean, I don't know. So anyway, I booted up the Wikipedia page and the whole thing, because that's the best place to start. Yeah, because I've heard of the show before, but I never actually watched it, or knew what drifting was even about.
You should watch it. It's a great show.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm just, I don't know. Just like, I don't have time nowadays. It's like, either I do my YouTube grind, or I go to work, or I sleep, or,
Yeah, I know that grind. Yeah.
So, what I understand is that Initial D is kind of like an underdog story about a young kid in Guma who's trying to be the fastest racist in the world, and he has his many race battles. So I gotta ask, is that your dream too? To be not a racist, but not that kind of racist, the other kind of racist.
A racer. The fastest racer.
Yeah, a racer. Is that better? All
right. For me, actually, so my dream is not to be the fastest racist or the fastest racer. I want to make so what I'm doing right now is I want to make a documentary that's the most authentic depiction of Japanese hashiriya culture. And hashiriya, it means street racer. Yeah, there's like a bunch of stuff on YouTube, but there's nothing really that tells a narrative that shows what the history is like. And for me, that's what's the most compelling part of it. It's not just the street racing and the drifting when you're out there in the mountains and you're seeing them sliding around the corners at like 100 kilometers an hour. It's, for me, what's compelling is like these are just normal guys, but at night they go onto the mountains and they're like legends in that toge, in that course, right? But like on the daytime, they're just like normal dudes who will work at like gas stations and garages and in konbinis, and they're very unassuming, very quiet, nice guys, but they have this incredible skill that's developed over years and through thousands of dollars of tires and crashes and replacing bumpers and replacing stuff that they've broken. Yeah, it's a crazy world. And the thing that's really interesting is if you watch Initial D, it seems to be a very fantastic, romanticized depiction of what the hashiriya, the street racer scene, is like. When I came to Japan, when I first discovered the real life equivalent of the scene, I thought that initially was just an anime, right? But as I've gotten more and more into it over the past 2-3 years now, actually, of kind of exploring this scene, what I've realized is the real life scene in the past, like 20 years ago, influenced the anime. And then the anime is a very realistic depiction of the scene at that time 20 years ago. And then now the anime has now influenced the current generation of hashiriya who grew up watching Initial D and are trying to mimic what they saw in the anime.
I mean, I don't know, because the reason I'm asking, like, you're in terms of a person, I mean, because usually, like, people, we have wants and needs, just like fictional characters. I mean, do you, like, plan or have goals with, like, the terms of drifting? Excuse me. Do you have plans with all of this in terms of drifting?
I would love to actually get into drifting myself and do some drifting on the circuit. Oh, the only thing is, it's a money thing, really. It's I spend most of my money on camera stuff and all this gear to film this and to document this scene. But drifting is a very, very expensive hobby. You spend tons of money on tires and...
Give me a ballpark. How much would you say it costs?
Well, let's just say like a set of tires. You could run through a set of tires in a day. Like if you get like a set of 4 tires, take them to the track, you'll use them up in like a day, and it'll cost you like, I don't know, $400-$500.
Wow. Yeah, that adds up.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quickly, and like that's not even if you crash your car. And it's like drifters call their cars missiles for a reason. That's the actual term that's used, a missile, because they're very, after several years of drifting, your car is going to be very boro, which means like very banged up and very held together by zip ties and hopes and dreams.
Zip ties, hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
Title this episode.
Yeah. Zip ties, hopes and dreams, and a prayer. I really respect these guys so much because it's incredible how much passion that they have for their cars, that they're willing to work at jobs that give them, for one thing, like connections in that world. So they'll work at like garages and in gas stations and at car factories. And so they'll know people within that scene. So they'll be able to get hookups of tires, cheap tires and things like that. And they'll places to work on their cars, like friends' garages and things like that. But when you're learning, right, you're probably gonna bang your car up. You're gonna if you're doing it, even if you're doing it at a circuit, if you go off the circuit into the grass, you could rip your bumpers. You could that's not even compared to how bad it can get when you're street drifting, when you're doing it on the mountains. Like people crash into the side of the mountain and into the railings, right? One of the guys I was talking to, I was like, he was incredible, right? So he's very young. He's like 23. And I was like, how did you get so good? This is incredible. We would be going down the mountain and going sideways around a corner 2 or 3 times faster than I take that corner, like not going sideways. And when it's not slippery, when it's not icy, like he would be going around it at like 120 kilometers an hour. I'd be going around at like 50. And then he would look at me and be like, sorry, I can't go that fast because the road is kind of icy tonight. I'd be like, what? Are you insane? How did you get this good? This I can't even, right? And he was like, I practice a lot, like I've memorized the course like the back of my hand. And I was like, how many times have you crashed? And he was like 10, 15, maybe 20, over 20 times. And I was like, holy shit. So the amount of passion that these guys have is just, it's astounding. They love it so much. They love the scene. They love the whole culture of cars around it, that they just put their life into it. And it shows in the skills that they develop, which are like monsters. Like you can't even, until you've ridden in a car that's going sideways, you can't even imagine the level of skill and how somebody could possibly get that good at controlling a car. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know. Like when you're driving a car and like imagine these guys when they crash all the time. What's the number one thing they always like need to replace? Just tires?
You go through tires really quickly. You'll go through.
Shows you what I know. Yeah, that's true. You do go through tires quickly, especially if you're drifting, huh?
Yeah. So I mean, like the better you get, hopefully the less you crash. But stuff like control arms break, like just suspension stuff. The bumpers, you'll get into like fender benders with other hashiriya when you're doing tandem drifts. So like maybe like your car will tap the other guy's car when you're going sideways together. So you'll have like body damage and stuff like that. So it's interesting because drifting is, to me, it's almost like snowboarding with a snowboard made out of glass. Like you can't screw up or you're gonna damage your car very, very quickly.
So like learning drifting techniques or, being able to drive in real drift racing, is this something you've done yourself or you've only watched people do it?
So on the toge, like occasionally I'll slide the back out a little bit, just like hooting and step on the accelerator and like get the back to kick out. But to be able to chain multiple drifts together is something that I'm at the best still working on. Like in a parking lot, you'll go and you'll kick the back out. Sure, you go get a nice drift, but to get it to like swing back the other way, controlled, and to be able to see the line on the toge, like which line that you actually want to take. I'm nowhere near close to that.
So that's kind of your goal these days, to be able to do that.
I like the feeling of drifting, but I also like the feeling of going fast. Not a straight line, but like grip racing. So, learning the limits of adhesion of your tires. So, drifting is all about sliding, getting that nice long slide because it feels awesome. But I like I also like the feeling of doing a course like really, really fast. And I mean, in the future, I do want to get into drifting. Hopefully, it'll be a dream that it can make come true for sure.
Well, how often do you drift? Do you like once a month, every like 2 weeks, or?
Like I said, I don't go drifting, but I go driving quite a bit because here in Gunma, I'm literally down the street from the Initial D Mountains. So yeah, so like a couple times a week, maybe I'll just go for like a cruise, like a nighttime drive, and every once in a while, somebody will come up on me, and then we'll go for like a spirited run, up and down the Toge, or I'll come up on like somebody in another, like an MR2 or an S2000 or something, and we'll kind of play cat and mouse up and down the Toge. And yeah, then that's basically how I meet people too. So like let's say I see a cool car at a Konbini, I'll stop at the Konbini, I'll get a drink, and if I see them outside, I'll talk to them for a bit. I'm like, hey man, that's an awesome car you got there, and we'll kind of talk about cars, become friends that way. Yeah, I mean that's basically how I started getting into the scene when I decided I wanted to make this documentary.
So that's your big dream, is just to make this huge documentary about how real life reflects art and art reflects reality, that sort of thing.
I think what I would like to do is eventually do a series about different aspects of Japanese car culture. So not just the drift scene, not just the street racing scene.
Oh, so not just the drift scene. Okay.
Yeah, but there are all these really fascinating underground subcultures of cars. And so I would love to have like an entire series of that. Like my big goal actually is to have a series on Netflix, and then eventually a movie out of this.
Just about Japanese cars.
About the different the different subcultures surrounding the Japanese cars.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, I'd definitely watch that, because I know cars are like the #1 export here in Japan. So
yeah, big business, right?
Because you'd always have everybody in the States. I'm not sure if it is I'm sure it's in Canada too, but everybody had a Japanese car. That was like the #1 car everybody had, because they were reliable,
Right, everybody drove a Civic or a Camry or Corolla.
Yeah, and so I thought everybody, and I'd have friends in the States, and they'd just be car crazy, and they'd always be talking about cars. Every day at lunchtime, like at high school, it's always talking about cars. But like when then I came here, I've noticed that there wasn't so much talk about cars. Maybe that's because I'm living in Tokyo, where it's inconvenient to have a car. Would you say there's much more car talk out there in Inaka countryside?
Definitely. So the thing about Tokyo, like you said, is it's very expensive to own a car, and it's inconvenient to drive it around. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I haven't moved to Tokyo, and it's because I love having a car. In Tokyo, like a parking space could run you $200, $300, $400 a month, like the closer you get into the center of the city. So it's pretty insane. But out here, like outside of like Tokyo proper, the prices get much more reasonable. Like I don't have to pay for parking for my car, although like most people would pay like maybe $50 a month for parking. There's just no reason to have a car like near Tokyo, because people just take the trains everywhere, right? But over here, there's definitely much more of a culture of cars, especially here in Gunma. And what's really interesting is, so over the past year or so, one of the things I've really been exploring for my documentary is the history of car culture here in Gunma, the history of the Hashiriya. And what's interesting is I'll talk to a lot of people in their 40s and 50s, and these are just, by all accounts, normal people. So they'll be like secretaries, or they'll be like teachers. They'll have a completely unrelated job in an unrelated field, like restaurant owners. But what they've told me is 20 years ago, almost everybody was into cars. And so into cars that everybody had sports cars. Everybody would go for drives up into the mountains. A lot of people were hashiriya, they were street racers. So it was a huge part of the culture. They even express they lament that the current generation has kind of lost interest in cars in favor of smartphones and playing Puzzle Dragon. Yeah. They shake their heads.
Shave their heads. Yeah, for anybody out there who doesn't know, like in Japan, if you shave your head, it's considered a...
Oh, I said shake their heads.
Shake their heads. Okay, they're saying to shave their heads and shame.
Yeah.
It's like, I gotta stay home, play Puzzle Drag. Instead of drive my car.
Shave.
No, because you know how in Japan, like, if you shave your head, it's like a sign of, like, surrender or something? Have you heard this before?
Yeah, it's like a deference to authority.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. I thought it was just like, they like shaving their heads. I guess, like, Sam taught me this, TQ Sam, a friend of mine. Did you learn this from anime? Or did you just, something you learned from here, from, living in Japan?
I think just living here. There's a lot of things that a lot of things about Japan that you have no idea about until you come here. You're like, oh, anime never explained this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's certain things like I had come here and I'm like, oh, so that's why they do that.
Like masks, for example, right? Before you came to Japan, you're like, why does everyone... I didn't realize so many people wore masks. You never see it in, like, movies and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's one thing you definitely see a lot of. Like, why is everybody being a doctor? You're not a doctor, all right?
For me, everybody looks like a ninja.
Yeah, right? I don't know. Like, especially if, like, you have the black mask.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's a way for you to be really mysterious or, like, to hide away from the culture, since that's the thing here.
I think, so the mask thing is interesting. So I think there's two reasons. Well, there's three, actually. So, number one, if you're sick, right? You don't want to spread your germs. And the second reason is if you don't want to get sick, if people around you are sick, so you don't want to catch their germs. And the third reason is, like you said, if you want to kind of... Actually, there's four reasons. The third one is if you're a girl and you don't want to put on makeup that day, so you just put on a mask so you don't have to put on, like, you don't have to do your face, or you only have to do half of it. And the fourth reason is it's kind of like wearing headphones in public when you're not really listening to music. It's when you just kind of want to keep to yourself. It's kind of like you're telling other people, like, don't bother me, kind of thing.
That's like you could be like street hustler by night, regular student by day, just because you wear the mask.
Yeah. Plus, I guess you can obscure your identity. There's 5 reasons. So, yeah.
Going back to your name here, your name, Drifthunter Albo, so you would say that's more of a handle than really just based in solely just one subject?
That's like the name of my channel and all my social media stuff, so people can find me. Yeah, because that's my main project right now, the Drifthunter documentary series.
So if, like, let's say you get a lucky break and somebody says, hey, I'm going to give you the Netflix series, and then maybe you're going to make a documentary on cars, are you thinking about changing your name, or are you just still going to keep the whole Drifthunter thing?
My strategy right now, and maybe this might help you guys who are kind of building your online brand or like your YouTube channel or whatever. In my opinion, I think it's good to start narrow, like find a very narrow niche, like build a brand in that. And then later on, you can kind of like expand. So later on, I should probably trademark Albo before anybody else does. And later on, I could just be like Albo, who did Drifthunter and who had these other things, right?
Be next Donald Trump. Don't run for president, though, please.
No, I can't for Canada, right? So,
Oh, that's right. Well, what's his name?
14th Amendment.
There's like some Canadian candidate who wanted to be president. What's his name?
Somebody from Canada wanted to be president?
What was his name? I can't remember. It was not Jeb Bush. It was what's that guy's name? It's gonna bother me all day.
Put it in the show notes.
Ted Cruz. That's what it was. Ted Cruz.
He's from Canada?
Ted Cruz. Or supposedly he was born in Canada or something like that.
Oh, okay. This is some weird conspiracy.
Yeah. Anyway, so you said you're trademarking your name. You should trademark your name and...
Yeah, probably should. Yeah. No, it's interesting too because, like, I almost regret naming my brand Drifthunter because as I've gotten deeper and deeper into this scene, I've realized drifting is just one aspect of it. And so there's like, it's like the whole culture of the Hashiriya. Maybe I should have called it Hashiriya Hunter or something, but it doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way.
That's fine. I think Drifthunter's good. I mean, something easy to remember. I've heard, or read somewhere that, like the YouTube channels, generally they have like this, like they should have this plethora of content related to you. It's like the personality channel. Like how you see like people like PewDiePie, you know, who used to play only solely Let's Play videos. Now they've branched out and like they make whatever they feel like videos, you know, interview, vlogs, whatever.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what I want to do too, actually.
Would you go as far to say that like all channels should probably be personality channels on YouTube? Because I mean, basically that's what we all do. We're getting our start. I mean, personality channel is just about you, really. But I mean, it's not like stuck to one brand. You don't just do videos only on drifting. You know, you have other stuff. You got stuff on clubbing and because I like, you know, whenever you go to somebody's YouTube channel, you always look like, okay, which one has the most views and which one's the most popular? Because YouTube lets you look at these little things. I've noticed, like, your top ones are all the ones about drifting, and then there's the one about clubbing, and there's another couple Japan-related things.
Well, my thinking on that is, like, if you want to get, like, traction, or if you want to get big on YouTube, then you should pick something that you're really passionate about doing and get really good at that thing. Or make the best content on YouTube at like that one specific thing. So like, for example, if your videos are about like Japan and you want to be like a Japan vlogger, then you better make like the best damn Japan vlogs ever. Or else it's going to be very hard to stand out because there's so much competition. And so if you have like, yeah, there's so much, like the thing is that I think it's like almost every niche is like hyper saturated. And the only way to stand out is if you make the best of like one particular thing. So you got to choose like what that one thing that you want to be the best in the world at is, and then go and make that thing. And then later on, once you've established kind of a name for yourself as being like, oh, I'm okay. Like for me, I'm the Drifthunter guy. And so like maybe once I've established a following of like, I don't know, 100,000 or a million people, then I would have a little bit more freedom to kind of branch out, to do other things. And I mean, I've experimented with it in the past, but I think when you're starting out, it's a battle of priorities. It's like, you know, you have a goal to blow up, to get bigger, and you could do the type of videos that you think are gonna help to do that, like this, like maybe they're videos that your audience really wants to see, or you could make like random videos about like your dog and stuff, and like maybe people be like, "What the hell? I didn't sign up for this."
Yeah, like, do you remember that YouTuber that came out? Was around a long time ago. Do you remember magibon?
Yeah. Oh man, I do remember. She just stared at the camera.
Yeah, what happened to her?
Dude, she actually got on Japanese TV and everything. It was weird. For you guys who don't know this little tidbit of internet history, so magibon was like, she was a Japan vlogger before Japan vlogging was a thing, and she lived in America. So she was like the proto weeaboo, like the first weeaboo, but like the queen of weeaboos. And no, it was so weird, dude. Like, people probably don't know this, so they should look this up on the internet. What she would do, literally, is she would stare at the camera, okay, with like really big anime-style puppy dog eyes, and that's it. That was the entire video. Like, she would film like 1 minute, 2 minutes of her staring at the camera, and like the next video would be the same thing, and the next video, and the next video, and it became this phenomenon. It was so weird, and it turned out she was just some random girl living in Texas or something, working at like a supermarket, and the whole thing was super sad. I think like one of the Japanese TV stations flew her out to be on a variety show, and she couldn't understand anything, and she was just exposed as this giant weeaboo, and it's a sad story.
Well, because when I saw her channel, it's like, to me, it just looks like none of these channels that are like one-trick ponies. You know, they have like one thing they can do really well, and then that's it, and they can't come up with anything else that's like, you know, that tops what they're doing. Kind of like, what's her name, a little while ago, like hanaminx. She never really, like, I knew she was her subs were gonna go down, or she was gonna quit or something.
I remember that name. What did she do again?
hanaminx, she was the girl with the boobs, like the big boobs, and she taught Japanese lessons horribly. Like, simple Japanese words, like, today we're gonna learn Ringo. Ringo is, you know, that sort of thing. Is Japanese apple.
And it should be wearing like a low-cut dress and like be bouncing around. A
low-cut dress, yeah. And she got on like Philip DeFranco, and that's why she blew up. She was on the Young Turks and all that stuff, and then she disappeared. as far as I'm concerned, I think because I'm friends with her on Facebook. Like all I know is that she got married and she was like in some short film or like some horror movie. And that's the last thing I've heard of her.
Sounds like a the start of like a porno or something.
Maybe, I don't know. Wait, this
it's the fall from grace of the YouTuber, and then like she starts showing up in like these low budget like browser type videos.
Well, I don't think she gets naked in it, so I don't think because well, I won't go into it here. Maybe.
Yeah, well, you know, when the YouTube money stops flowing, you know, you do what you got to do to eat, I guess.
Yeah, well, because I knew her personally, so
it probably is like with YouTubers in general. It's like you get tired of the grind.
Oh, definitely, I know that feel.
Right, and yeah, I know that feeling too. And it's like for you guys who are aspiring YouTubers, like hang in there, keep making good content, keep making great content, okay? Because the grind is rough. You know.
Thanks, Albo.
Yeah, you too, man. Like, keep working. Like, you know, keep doing cool interviews and shit. No, but I mean, no, like the grind is tough. It's real. So, yeah, just shout out to everybody who's doing it.
Yeah, no, because I've seen lots of YouTubers come and go. Like, I don't know. You remember Apple Milk?
Yes, I remember that name. But what kind of videos did she make?
I don't know. She made condescending Japanese lesson videos. Anyway, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that it's being able to, you know, reinvent yourself constantly, and I think you can do it. I mean, because you have the whole Drifthunter angle, and you know, you seem to have a plan, and you know, most people just they have one thing, and then they just like, well, that was the thing, moving on, you know.
Yeah, move on, find the next thing, and I mean, like, who knows? You can never really figure out where life's gonna take you 5-10 years from now. Like, I could never have imagined 10 years ago that I would be making this documentary still living here in Japan. So at the time I was just playing the video game.
That's part of life. You always feel like you know where you're going, and then you're like, well, I'm going to go this direction. Then I'm going this way, you know?
Yeah.
This stuff you just kind of slip into.
Yeah, it's a strange journey.
Well, anyway. Well, finally, I mean, for those people who, you know, somehow found this podcast or video or where they're listening to it, because, you know, they went to Google and typed in "drifting dudes talk about drifting."
I mean, if people look up Drifthunter, they'll probably find us eventually.
Right. Well, I mean, can you tell me, is Tokyo just like how it is in Fast and the Furious 3 Tokyo Drift?
So okay, so it's a very Hollywoodized depiction of it.
Oh yeah. It's very Hollywood. I was being sarcastic, but yeah. I mean, obviously nobody's going to be drifting in the middle of Shibuya, right?
Right, exactly. But I like the neon feel of it, the exoticness of like when you go to Shibuya, there's just tons of like hypercars driving around, like Lamborghinis and stuff. And so in a sense, it actually it is quite similar to how it's depicted in Tokyo Drift. And you know, the deeper you get into, like, I've met like these guys who are basically Lamborghini Bozozokus. Like, they drive around in modded Lamborghinis and just like coon around Tokyo, doing whatever the fuck they want. And so yeah, I mean, those guys are definitely living the Tokyo Drift life.
How would you define Bozozokus?
So they're kind of like biker gangs. They're like dudes who just like cooning their bikes and their cars, like just making a lot of noise.
So let me ask you this: do you know what came first, drifting or Fast and the Furious?
Well, I mean, of course, drifting and the street racing scene, and yeah, and Initial D and Fast and Furious are just the kind of like romanticized depictions, not altogether realistic, but you know, derived from the original story that inspired it, the real life version of it.
I mean, yeah, actually, like when I was writing up these questions and, you know, cruising around websites for info, I found this article about Racer X. I mean, not like Speed Racer kind of thing, but it was just called Racer X, which was kind of the inspiration for Fast and the Furious.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you think there was a lot of influence that work hand in hand with Fast and the Furious and Initial D?
Yeah, definitely. Like in Initial D. So the way, okay, let me just trace real quick, like how I think this whole thing happened. So there was like this original scene, like the original street racing scene in Gunma and around like the Kanto region, and there are also some scenes around Japan, like Kansai and like farther west, like Hiroshima, of like just people who would drive their sports cars in mountains, right? And so it was a pretty big cultural phenomenon, especially during the bubble period in Japan, like in the 80s, where Japan was just like flooded with money and people just had money to go buy nice things. A lot of people bought sports cars and stuff, and they would go, racing them on the mountains, and like near Tokyo, they would go racing them on the highways. And then from that, there were like fictional depictions of those real life subcultures. So that's how you got Initial D. And in the late 90s, Gran Turismo and video games like Need for Speed kind of introduced, they're classics now. Like these are the games I played growing up, and they introduced Japanese cars to the Western world, and there were other things like magazines that were brought that were covering like the Japanese scene. And so it was especially in California, it was kind of an underground thing. But when the games came out, and then the Fast and Furious eventually came out, which blew up the scene, and like then everybody wanted to get into modding cars and stuff, and then it became this huge worldwide cultural phenomenon of like being into Japanese JDM cars, Japanese domestic market cars.
Okay, so you would say Fast and Furious was kind of like the catalyst to all this?
I think, it was a very, very big component of the reason like JDM culture is so huge around the world. And then now it's like the interesting thing is now like the Western scene is reverse influencing the Japanese scene. So like the Japanese guys are saying, oh, what the guys are doing in Japan or in America with their Japanese cars is really cool. We want to do that too. So do you see what's happening? It's like this reverse influence. Like the influence is being reverse imported back to Japan. And it's creating like this loop. And then so like the trend is being reverse imported to Japan, where then it's like changed a little bit more, and then it's imported back to America.
Yeah, you see a lot of that, like even like with video games, kind of. Because I'm not sure, I'd have to check my sources on this, but I'm pretty sure like when they made Mario, they kind of made him on accident. Because like they originally wanted to make a Popeye game, but they couldn't get the rights for the Popeye game. So they just changed Bluto to look like a gorilla. and Mario was supposed to be, Popeye.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, supposedly, so they had to like change it. It says, well, just call him Jumpman, because he jumps. He's got to save olive oil. And eventually it came in, like, gaming historians know that Mario came from the guy's name. There's a guy's name in Nintendo America. His name was Mario. He's kind of an asshole, kind of this Donald Trump figure. And they named him Mario because he was red. And I think they gave him a mustache. I don't know. I'm not sure about the mustache, but I know that they named him after the Nintendo America guy. And then eventually it was Donkey Kong. Anyway, the point is, it all started from the States, and then it came back, and then Mario's become like this huge cultural staple. So it was all just due to like Japan wanting to make, a Popeye game. Yeah, so I can definitely see like where drifting came in and how it became a thing, and then there was Initial D, and why is it called Initial D? I need to know this. It's like, I don't know, because nowadays, like, I guess they always use the word D. It's like giving her the D. I don't know, because I'm I'm a pervert or whatever.
Man.
Anyway, what does it come from?
It's related to, I forget the exact reason, but it's, oh man, I can't remember the exact reason. It's related to the. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm getting some weird feedback on my mic.
Okay.
No, it's related to the Japanese name, which is like Hashiramoji D. And,
okay.
Hang on. Let's look up what that actually means.
Okay.
Let's see.
Just go to Google. I guess these are all really questions for Google. Just say, "Yo, why is Initial D?" Why? Okay, these are the first searches. Why is Initial D so good? Why is it so popular? Why is Initial D meme? Why is Initial D... Oh, here we go. It's the fourth one. Why is Initial D called Initial D?
Okay. What does it say? I feel like I should know this.
It's doesn't give me a straight answer. Like a Yahoo Answers should be the best one here, even though they're sometimes terrible. Let's see what Yahoo Answers.
Maybe there's a core or something.
Nope, that gave me nothing. All right, well, let's see. Initial D discussion board. I hate cruising these things. Oh, this guy says it stands for drift. Like, initial usually means...
Yeah, what's the initial for?
I guess
first?
it's the first.
Like
the first drift. He's the first guy to come up with drifting. Well, the character in the anime, his name is Takumi?
Yeah.
What's his name? Wait a minute. He doesn't create drifting. Drifting was around before he was around, right?
No. He doesn't. So he's just, like, in a story, he's just a random dude.
Yeah.
That
it's
his dad drives... his dad has a tofu business, and so he has to do deliveries. So doing the deliveries, he gets really, really fast.
Okay. It's not like he creates drifting. Maybe that'd just be ridiculous.
No,
Okay.
he doesn't invent drifting.
Yeah, okay. All right. Because that makes sense, like initial, first, drifter. No.
So the Japanese name is actually that's it, Kashiramoji.
Kashiramoji.
So
Okay.
Kashiramoji, it just means like the first letter of a word. So, or initial, right? And they just did a direct translation to English, to initial D. So
Okay.
yeah. Not much of an explanation. I think it's just like
Well, it's just a title.
it's gonna be the first word of drifting, you know.
Your first, yeah. I got it. Well, what is it? Was there other drifting manga out there besides Initial D?
There actually aren't, or not any that
Well, I guess it can claim that
became
title.
very famous at all.
Can't be called
Yeah.
Initial.
Yeah, well, definitely the first one that really blew up.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
You should definitely watch it. There is so it's an old series, right? But there are 3 movies.
That seems like it'd be fun.
There are 3 movies that came out just a couple years ago. They're really short, like only 45 minutes. So,
Okay, yeah, no, I'll check it out.
pretty good. Just find them online.
And last thing I gotta ask is, I don't know, maybe you'll hate me for this,
Uh-oh.
but have you ever seen the commercial? There's a commercial for this old, like, retro, like, board game toy called Crossfire. Have you ever heard of it?
Crossfire?
Yeah.
And
And they had this kind of, like...
Crossfire? Nope. Look it up.
They had this, like, Twisted Sister kind of soundtrack to it. It goes something like, Crossfire, Crossfire, like that sort of thing. I had this, like, you get caught up in love, and I had this, like, idea for your channel. I don't know why. You don't have to take this. Maybe this would be the most insulting thing you hear all day, or all year, or whatever. But it's just, I have this vision of, like, your channel starts off, and it just goes, Drifthunter! You know? And, like, somebody screams it out loud, and your name, you know, whizzes by the screen. Drifthunter! You know, I don't know.
Okay, I found a commercial from the 90s. I'm gonna pop it up right now.
Yeah, watch it right now and tell me what you think. It's so bad.
Okay. If it has like the 90s kind of 80s vibe to it, I actually really like that vibe.
Yeah?
So, yeah, I might consider it. Okay, let's see. Here we go.
All right.
Crossfire, full commercial.
Yeah, it's great. Changed my life. Actually, no, it didn't. I made that up.
Yeah, let's see. 2 million views. Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
This person, 2 million views and 159 subscribers.
This is like the worst thing to do. Watch something on an audio show.
Yeah, I guess you can just cut it.
No, that's fine. I'll leave this in. But explain to me
Crossfire.
what are you feeling? What do you...
It's super slow right now. Like my computer is like on its last legs.
Oh, really?
So maybe you should play it. I should listen to it.
All right, let me see if I can pull it up here. I don't know. Sometimes, like when you do these Skype things or Google Hangouts, it mutes your computer.
Yeah.
So let me see here. Crossfire commercial. Here we go. Can you hear it?
Let's see. Nope.
Can't hear it?
Nope.
It's too bad. Okay, well, I'll play it at the end of this. Hopefully I don't get dinged for it. But, yeah, so that's my vision for your show, hopefully.
Okay, well, I'll check it out. And
Yeah.
if it does end up being influenced, I'll give you like a credit at the end.
Cool.
Special thanks to Radley.
All right, anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, if anybody listened to this entire thing, thank you so much for listening to this whole podcast. Hope you guys found it entertaining, useful, found some interesting information about the history of Hashira culture, and I'd love for you guys to check out my channel. You can just look up Drifthunter Albo on YouTube and also on Instagram, and there's also a website, drifthunter.net. So check all that stuff out.
I'll put in the show notes.
Awesome. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. And have a great day, guys. Peace.
See ya.
It's sometime in the future. The ultimate challenge. Crossfire. Crossfire. You get caught up in the crossfire. Crossfire. You get caught up in the crossfire. 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 You'll get